Hello, welcome. I haven't made a video on these. It's the XT Deore M091 3x7 shifters. Today we're going to do a part 1 and it will be for the 3-speeded side. This one, both of them are sticky and clearly need to be cleaned on the interior. Since I haven't done a video on these particular shifters, it's a good time to make one. So let's begin. First thing, try and aim to remove all the spring tension by shifting down. I've still got the cable, so it's very obvious that it's all the way to the bottom. Let's remove the screws for the plastic cover underneath. Let's lift up that cover. It's quite dirty. There's a nut here to remove, and I'll be going normal clockwise. So underneath that there's a spacer, copper coloured. That's the side. Here you've got a spring. Let's zoom in. Right here there's a spring. You can kind of flicker that up and you can take it out. Let's lift up this first lever. Underneath that there's a spacer, copper coloured one again, a bit more like a bushing. Right here there's a Phillips screw. This one's extremely dirty, so I'm having a hard time to engage it. There you go, I've got it. So I'm just unscrewing that. Let's lift this up now. There's a spring right here being held on, which is now going to disconnect completely. There you go. That's probably the hardest part when putting back in. So there's a spring here. Now I think this was hooked up right there when I took it off initially. So here there's a kind of a sill, but we're not going to take that off yet. There's this spring. You can now flip it over. We're going to take off the rest, take the rest out from the lever itself. So we're going to unscrew this. Take that off. I've still got the cable that's left over. I can take that off now. Okay, now we can take this off. So there's a spring for the cam that we're going to lift up. I'm going to just take all that apart. And so there's this sprocket and the cam. It's very, very stuck together though. Let's get something sharp to wedge underneath it. There you go. So this little spacer was actually, let's just put it back on to where we took it off. That's still stuck. Okay, we got it off. Let's put that to one side, and that one. And here, so we have the lever and copper coloured washer. Another bushing towards the end, and I think that's going to be everything. you go. And over here we had the seal. Let's put that to the side. There's a pull. We can now lift up and we're going to clean that. Here again there's another pull on the lever that we first took off. Need to remove that clip. It's gone on the floor. Let's go look for that. Let's lift up this. I think here's a tiny little spacer. And this spring looks like it's symmetrical. Let's put those separately. Lucky me, found it straight away. That should be everything now for this one. I'm going to get some degreaser, put it in a little pot, and I'm going to clean each bit by bit. Good 10-20 minutes work there. And clean off the grit and the dirt. This is how I usually do it. Just get a lid and put the parts with some degreaser and bit by bit, and then I put them back in order. Everything's now cleaned. Let's begin by greasing a couple of the parts. What you want to do, I think, is avoid putting grease on everything, especially these parts here, as the you won't have that clicky sound. So this time I'm going to try and see if I can get the clicky sound without and avoid putting too much grease on some of the parts, because although they work, some of my shifters, after they don't do that nice clicky sound which we all recognize and love. So let's put the spring. One tip goes into the hole at the back. We then have the pull to put on, and the other tip's going to go in front of it like so. This one had a tiny little plastic washer and a clip that goes on the top. Let's grab the main axle. I've put a very light coating of grease. We have this type of spacer bushing that seats all the way down there at the bottom. Grab the lever. You want that going to be in this position, and on top of that there was a it's got dirt on it, but yeah, there's this copper washer. Take the cam and the sprocket part, and they're going to be seated into like that, and then this is going to go on the top here. You then want to grab the spring, so one has a tip going into kind of like into the inner circle, and one tip's just straight sticking upwards. So that tip that's sticking upwards is going to go into the hole. There's a tiny little hole at the back of that cam, so you need to seat that into it. I'm zooming in so that way you've got a clear view. Now that other tip, that spring, is going to go into, there's a slit at the back of the shaft. Hold on, I'm going to try and point that out. Which is located right there. So you can kind of move that shaft and get that into the right position, and so you're going to want that spring to go into that little slit of the shaft. Make sure this is all properly engaged, as this spring is your return spring for this lever. So if that's not working, this whole mechanism is not going to work, and they do slip when you're installing them. Make sure that that's not slipped. You can actually kind of test it, tensioning on the spring and seeing if it kind of returns. I just slipped out a little bit there. Again, put that back in. We can now grab the kind of like the cover, the holder for the mech. So there's a sill, make sure you put that first down because then you'll have to do it later and it's more annoying. So there's like a cross-shaped part here at the end of the axle, which we're going to insert at the back here. Now you're going to want this axle to be actually in the right position, which is a little bit tricky actually, because you also want to tension up this spring at the same time. But I'll show you how to do it. So anyway, what you want to do is avoiding and making sure that the spring doesn't slip out, because then you have to start again. Aim to put this in. I put it upside down. Like so. Let's see if I put it in the right place first. No. Turn it around. Is it this way? Yeah. Okay, so normally if you look at the end of the axle, you see here there's one part that's lower than those rest of those kind of like, I don't know, teeth. And that lower part is, let's say, facing towards where there's this barrel adjuster. And you want to make sure that's correct, because when we're going to put this plate later, you'll see there's two teeth there that insert onto here. And there, that's where that screw goes. So you can kind of already test it now to see, for example, if you've got it right. And I think I've got it wrong, actually. Yeah, I've got it wrong. I need to do it, turn it one more time. Okay, I've turned it around, yeah. So here, the that part that's lower, it's still facing towards this way. And you can take this plate and insert it, and you'll see there was that screw that's going on top of where that pull's going to eventually go, like this. Now that arm's the wrong way, it needs to go the other way, so I'm going to have to gently lift it up and put it back towards here. Right, now this cam, you're going to need to twist it back towards here, but you can see already it's working. See how it's returning? But this is eventually going to go around about here, I think, because we're going to have a pull and it's going to kind of hold it in place. So on top of that pivot, let's put this pull back on. Let's move this out the way, push down. There. Put it there for now. Get it to engage into the sprocket. Let's just leave it like this. I think we can recline this back later on. And then there's a tiny little spring that goes on top of that. So the little hook part is going upwards. And that little tip of that spring there is going to go in front of the slit of the pull right there. So let's put that on. Let's put the shifter back into its place, the pod. And we're going to be also, I think it goes like that. Doesn't matter what position you put it in. And screw it down, so that will make everything easier for us. Another little tricky part for the rest. So we've got this spring. The tiny little tip that's facing downwards is going to go in front of the lever there. So let's just put that there for now. Like that. That hook part is going to latch onto here when we're going to put this plate back on top. And there's going to be a tiny little spring there for the pull, which is eventually going to go in front of this part there. So if you insert this now, normally you can already bring that spring back and click it over that. Okay, that's one done. And now we're going to have to do the more difficult part of getting that tiny little pot spring in front of this one. Oh, by the way, before I even do this, make sure that the spring is not overlapping onto something. You want this to be laying flat. In fact, before we even put that tiny spring off, I'm going to put the screw down to keep this plate in place. To hook that little part of the spring onto here, the best way I've found was just using something like this, like a hooking tool. Getting behind. Alright, got it. It's in front there, you can just see it. Whoop-de-doo. Next, we've got this bushing to put on. Let's just put that there. Swerve about a bit of grease. Now we've got this pull, so we're going to be putting the pull in front of this sprocket. And to do that, we're going to now be able to normally pull this cam backwards, and this pull should now be clicking in place now that it's been tensioned with that spring. So I just grabbed anything, just a knife, just to be able to click it back. There you go. That's now out of the way. We can now normally fit in the pull in between here, so it's going to need to be reclined back, and it's going to be going in between this spacing eventually. There you go, got it. Now you should be able to already kind of test this. If you just hold that like that, you can see at the back there the cam's moving, and then this should click it all back as well. And you actually want to detension that completely, so that you've got that inside there with the pull all the way to the end from this lever, pressing against the sprocket slash cam. Also, just to note, if you look, hold on, I'm going to try and zoom in. If you look just inside here, this lever actually slipped underneath the kind of stopper on that plate, and it went underneath it. You want to make sure that's back and hitting it properly and not sliding underneath. Right, well now we've pretty much done everything. We've got the spring now for this lever. So that tip that's going downwards there needs to go into the hole there at the back. Like so. You can now tension that spring, and the other tip of the spring there needs to go into that slot right there. side. Those are very annoying, those springs, they literally fall out. Okay, so now we've got this bolt that's going to hold everything down, and the washer. So let's put the washer first, and the bolt. Be careful not to make that slip. There. I really don't like the way they put that washer. It kind of just slides all over the place. I don't know see the point of it. Let's test this now to make sure it's working. It looks like it is. Yeah, okay, cool. Let's put the rest of the covers on. So there's that one here. Make sure it's properly seated. We've got 2 screws. First one. And the smaller one. Yeah, perfect, it's working. Right, well that's everything done. Not so clicky as what I'd like, but in fairness, these shifters are pretty awful. Really not my favourite shifter. I mean, if you're you want to put something to original spec, you'll use these. I mean, they work. It's just I don't know. From these years, I prefer farm shifters. So thank you for listening. I hope this helped you repair or clean or fix your XT M091 shifter. Until next time, part 2. Peace out.